this like the consensus of African leaders in any way, maybe? Or it depends from country A to country B, from country C to country D? Do you see variation? Or they have accepted this idea?
I think by and large there is an emerging consensus on this. We haven't done a thorough work to say who's with this or that, but I think judging from pronouncements by African leaders, whether it's at the level of the AU summit or ministerial conferences, the fact that they have established and designed GPAD itself and all this is pointing towards a direction of wanting a developmental role for the African state. So you can say there is consensus on this, but having said this, building effective developmental state, it's not an easy task. It is very challenging, and it has so much requirements in terms of its structures, its alliances, the right forces that will build it, the role of the institutions in this, creating a bureaucracy that is shielded from rent-seeking behavior and all that, an efficient bureaucracy built on meritocracy issues and all that.
Okay, probably now we try to gauge from government's perspective, but I think civil societies and NGOs have also a play to part. So in what form or in what shape will they be participating in the developmental state?
When we talk about developmental state, we're not talking about government. We're talking about a state with all actors. We've talked about the government or the public sector part of it. We talked about private sector. Civil society also have a very serious and central role to play in this. In terms of when you have a space for civil society, energizing civil society, but also civil society that is committed to the development prospects, aspiration of the nation. That is pulling the whole nation in the same direction. We wanted a civil society that will, when government gets it right, they say, yes, this is perfect, this is in the national interest, we support you in this. When they get it wrong, they say, we think there are alternative ways of doing this and that sort of thing. We want a constructive, objective civil society that is really inspired by the national affairs, by the national interest. Civil society that's pulling in the direction of development issues of the nation.
Okay, good. I think prior, to your appointment here, you have worked at the Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance in Sweden. So do you think that developmental state and the concept of democracy can go hand in hand?
Absolutely.
How?
They can go hand in hand, because actually what I would like to call for lack of maybe for a better term for a developmental state is a developmental democratic state, because I see democracy and development as two legs of one thing moving forward. Because democracy provides for rule of law, for respect for human rights and all this, respect for dignity, freedom and all that. Development today, particularly after here recall the work of Amartya Sen and others, when looking at development as freedom, development as unleashing the best in human beings. So I don't see any contradiction here. Both pulling in the same direction in providing an environment that is conducive, that is useful, that is for the betterment of the humankind.
But some countries you've mentioned in Southeast Asia, they haven't built the democracy as we define it, but or as the Western world define it, but nonetheless they have managed to produce remarkable growth.
Yeah.
So
well, here you are talking about liberal democracy when you say the West. So even this word democracy, it has of course so many interpretations and meanings and all that. So that is one aspect. But also if you look at all the experiences, probably with the exception of China, which is an experiment also, still need to look at it, the rest of them have eventually, they started probably as maybe as dictators, like in South Korea, like Malaysia, Taiwan, and all the others, even Indonesia. But eventually they moved towards building more democratic institutions, more open societies, and all that. So I think the future is for this. It is not a linear process. Anybody think about democracy as a linear process? You open the lid of dictatorship and find inside there democracy. You are wrong. Democracy is a dynamic process. You have to rise and fall in this process. You cannot learn it from outside practicing it. So it's a long process. It's in the nature of any public good. You have to navigate into a very grey, watery, murky, difficult area. You rise and fall in this process. If you look at the West today, with what we call democracy, in UK, where they call it the cradle of democracy, or France, or America, or the Scandinavian model, which is somewhere in between.
Social democracy.
Yes. There is not a single model of this liberal democracy. Each one was inspired, influenced, dictated by their history, circumstances, culture, and all these loaded things that produce this diversity of models of democracy. By coming late, we have the opportunity to pick and choose, but also to tailor. Democracy cannot be imported. It has to be homegrown. It has to be entrenched in that soil. And for that nation and that people, define the democracy that fits its history, its circumstances, and all that.
Okay. Before winding up, do you have some kind of concluding thoughts and message that you want to pass out?
Yes. Actually, working in development, you cannot afford not to be an optimist. Some people see the glass as half empty. I see it as half full. I see this continent firmly moving in the right direction by building its institutions, by charting a path for itself, by taking its destiny in its hand. And every day I see positive things happening in this continent against the African pessimism, the African gloom that is really portrayed in all the media of the world. Africa is definitely moving forward. We thought we'll never live to see Mandela free. Today, the apartheid regime in South Africa gave way to the most democratic, the best constitutional order, not in Africa, but in the world. So with that, I think we're really moving in the right direction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're now tuned in to Behind the Afro Mic. Behind the Afro Mic talks to people from all walks of life. Behind the Afro Mic is brought to you by 105.3 Afro FM, your infotainment station.